Hello, welcome to Scrap Time episode 754. My name is Christine, and on today's episode I'm showing you some stamps from my stamp box. Today I'm showing you some stamps from my stamp box. They are a Canadian company, so I always like to show you some Canadian products. This set here is called Lovely Houses. This one here is Striped Stems. And then we have a backgrounds, which has like a bubble wrap stamp and then some distressed stripes. So I'm going to show you a few things I made using these stamps. So here in my art journal, I had this background that I'd already had inks and that on. And I just stamped over top of it and then colored it in a bit. And then on the next page I did something similar. There with the flower. The background was sort of already there, and I was just using that by stamping over top of all the inks. Then I made this little tag in this same similar fashion with making a background and stamping over top of it. And here I just outlined a bit to give it some shadow. Here's a card I made, same sort of idea. And then another card by coloring in the background and stamping over top. And I'm going to show you how to get this sort of look today. So I'm starting with a piece of watercolor paper. I've also used tags before, but whenever you can, if you have a nice watercolor paper when you're going to be applying lots of water, it really helps your final project. And I'm going to be using Faber-Castell products today from the Design Memory Craft collection. And I'm starting with the gelatos. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to randomly apply color to my background here. I don't have anything particular in mind. I'm just applying these colors. I like to mix up my colors. Have a nice little rainbow going on. Throw in some red. Red can be a little powerful sometimes, so I'm just putting a little bit of red on. And then here we have some orange. So we'll see what that gets us. The next thing I like to do is then take a water bottle and really get it nice and wet. And that's why I like to use a watercolor paper when I do this, so I can really get that wet. And then I'm just sort of blending the colors. Now I don't want to get it too muddy, so what I'm going to do is take off some of the excess now and wipe off my table. So now that it's wet, I can still go over and apply some more colors, and it'll be a little bit more runny now. Oops. I dip my gelato into the water just to make it a bit more painterly. It's the darker blue. I'm going to go a little lighter. Yellow is always good to add in because it blends with so many colors. And by dipping it in water, you just get it to be a little bit more like paint. And I think I'm going to add a little bit more red. And I am happy with that background. Of course, if you don't want something so crazy, then you can use, colors that blend nicely together, not necessarily all the colors. So now I'm going to dry this before I can move on to the next step because I want it dry. So I have dried off my card now. It might have a little bit of moisture in it still, but that's okay. And I'm going to use a house from Lovely Houses. The stamps come in these CD cases that you can use for storage, and then it goes like that, and you can have your stamps here. I haven't taken them off the sheet yet, but I'll use this one and then the little hearts. So I'm just applying it to my dirty block here. And then I'm going to be stamping with Archival ink by Ranger. It's a waterproof ink, so it's good to do because we're going to be still coloring the house. And then you just want to stamp it over top. Now I find sometimes you'll see here it didn't stamp, and it's not the stamp, it is what you're stamping on. But because it's a clear stamp, I can lay it over top. And just try and make sure I get more pressure down into the middle there. Okay, let's see if that worked. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to take off my house, and I'm going to put these little hearts on. So we have little hearts coming from our chimney. There. So you can see how the colors underneath, it already looks cute with just those colors. But I have some of the big brush pit pens that I'm going to use a bit. And so I can, oh, this is a dark green. I'm going to put some water down. Find myself a little brush. And see if I can just pull that green. These pens are India ink based. So once they're dry, they dry waterproof, but while they're still wet, you can do that a bit. What I can do too is I can put it just right on my craft sheet here, and with the little water pick it up and color my trees. There we go. That's a little better. It's not so potent. I'm going to do the hearts though with the red. I like nice strong hearts. And then maybe we'll add some pink. So I'm just going to put some ink down. And then get my brush with some water and go over it. So this is why I said you need to have a stamp and a waterproof ink, because I'm going to be going over it with water just to blend out some of those colors. And you can just play around. You may want to go for a calmer color combination. I like to mix and match my colors. And just by putting down a little bit of marker and then with some water, you can take away those harsh lines. I guess a little pink. This is a lighter pink to the chimney, since we did pink in our roof. And that gives you some idea. I'm going to just put a little border. I like to draw little borders around. I find it just makes the card or project just look a little more finished with the border. Just like that. You can always add some little doodles in the corner. And that gives you a few ideas of how you can use the stamps from my stamp box with some gelatos and the big brush pens from Faber-Castell's Design Memory Craft collection. Well, that's it for today's episode. Be sure to check out our website at www.scraptime.ca. And on our next episode, I'm showing you a paint technique using paints from Echo Green Crafts. So please join us. Thanks for watching Scrap Time.